Good morning, everyone.
Morning. Thanks for having us.
Good morning.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. We're going to get started. My name is Lisa Mitchell, and I'm the Workforce Development Program Director here at HASC. Teri and I learned about the industry recognized apprenticeship programs, or IRAPs, through ASHRRA, which is the American Society for Healthcare Human Resources Administration. Thank you, Jeremy. When they put out an open call to healthcare facilities to use the IRAP model developed by Dallas College. Dallas College is a community college in Dallas County, Texas, and they were awarded $12 million from the Department of Labor to create and scale apprenticeships nationally in the healthcare industry. Dallas College has created the Healthcare Culinary Services Apprenticeship Program and offers IRAPs for sterile processing, MRI technician, and healthcare supply chain positions, with more programs in development. So as you may be aware, IRAPs are what is termed an earn and learn model, and combines a paid work experience with an educational component, resulting in an industry recognized credential. And we thought this would be an amazing opportunity to share with our members, for them to tap into, as it helps hospitals to onboard and train and retain new and current employees by helping to close that skills gap, and is a faster pathway to advancing into higher wage jobs and career paths. So in addition to our members, we also have invited our workforce system partners to join us and to learn more, and also to share experiences, because we are working on other apprenticeship models as well in this region. So we are delighted to welcome all of you to what we believe will be a fantastic discussion with presenters from Dallas College, ASHRRA, and Workcred. And we want this to be an interactive session and encourage you to enter your questions and your comments in the chat box, and or raise your hand with any questions. So we are recording, and we will be sharing the video and a copy of the slide deck after the event. And we're looking forward to engaging with all of you throughout our time together. And with that said, I will now turn it over to Amy Mackenroth with Dallas College. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you so much, Lisa and Teri, for having us today. We're really excited to present this project and this opportunity. And I already see in the chat today that we're talking about a staffing crisis. And this is definitely one potential avenue for you to explore to help resolve that crisis. So we're excited that you're here, and we'll jump right in with some introductions. So thank you, Lisa, for the introduction. I'm Amy Mackenroth, Senior Managing Director for Workforce Development at Dallas College. I have a background in workforce training and higher education, specific to healthcare, academic medicine, medical education, and other industries as well. With me today are Jeremy Sadlier and Roy Swift, and I'll let them introduce themselves.
Sure. My name is Jeremy Sadlier. I'm the Executive Director for ASHRRA, which, as was mentioned, is the American Society for Healthcare Human Resource Administration. I know it's a long acronym. So obviously, we're here to help support the healthcare HR industry through content, education, in-person learning, webinars, et cetera. And prior to coming over and becoming the Executive Director at ASHRRA in 2020, I spent 22 years or so with Advocate Aurora Health in the Midwest. So I was, started like many people in HR with a recruitment background, and moved into employee relations, and then into management, and then became the director and market director and regional director for Advocate Aurora Health, supporting the South market of Illinois. So I know what you're facing. I've faced it myself, experienced it myself, and when I was asked to help partner on this program and give some subject matter expertise and then help promote the program, it was a no-brainer. I know the impact a program like this can have.
Oh, good morning, afternoon, because I'm in Washington, D.C. Right now, and that's where Workcred is located with the American National Standards Institute, which many of you probably are quite aware of. My career consisted of 28 years in the Army Medical Department, where I ended up in the Army Surgeon General's office and Chief of the Army Medical Specialist Corps, which is sort of the rehabilitation field, allied health field of occupational therapy, physical therapy, dietetics, physician assistants for the Army worldwide. And then because healthcare is so involved in credentials and credentialing people, I headed up a certification body in healthcare. And in 2002, the International Organization for Standardization, ISO, created a standard for certification programs, people that say they certify people. And so I went to the American National Standards Institute and created that program. And because people didn't understand between the close words of certification and certificate, we had another American national standard created that is assessment-based certificate programs, education type credential that has an exam that measures learning outcomes so that people would understand the difference between certification and certificates. And now we're going to be presenting today a model for work-based learning in this grade, because we need multiple pathways. And all of you know, and it may be a surprise to you to learn that there are almost 1 million credentials in this country. And it's no wonder the navigation process of understanding what's good, what's bad, what's indifferent is a real process. And to be able to rely on quality credentials in healthcare particularly is a very important deal. My background is in continued competency in the professions. How does one maintain competency and achieve competency? So that's my background.
Thank you, Roy. So just a quick outline for what to expect today. We're not going to have death by PowerPoint, so don't stress. We do, as Lisa mentioned, we would love for this to be interactive, so feel free to interrupt, drop questions in the chat, or raise your hand. And I'm sure Lisa will help moderate that as well. So we're going to just give quick overviews of our organizations, talk about this project funded by the Department of Labor, talk about why should we use apprenticeship, talk specific about IRAPs, and then there are 4 main takeaways, which is that apprenticeship is a great retention tool for your organization. Apprenticeship has evolved. It's not just for the trades. It can be used for those trade jobs or knowledge worker jobs, and for entry level and mid-level positions. So think of it a little bit more broadly than you may have originally presumed. Also, IRAPs are a competency-based work and learn program, as Lisa mentioned, that are recognized and validated by a third party. That's really an important factor. And then the last part is that IRAPs are capstoned with an industry recognized certification. So Roy kind of started talking about Workcred, but Roy, did you want to talk a little bit more about what your specific mission is as executive director?
Because I saw issues with quality of credentials out there, to include in healthcare, and we decided that there was a real need to create an organization that looks at the quality, market value, and effectiveness of workforce credentials. Because as I just mentioned, over 1 million, it's hard to cipher and navigate which ones the employer should be recognizing, which ones have value, which ones really people generally come with the competencies as intended. So Workcred is about looking at strengthening the workforce quality by improving the credentialing system, which involves the federal government, the state government, private societies, higher education, a great deal of about 25 entities looking at credentials in this country that make up a system in this country and ensure the ongoing relevance. One of the biggest problems, of course, with credentials these days is that they do not remain relevant and spin out into obsolescence if not careful because of things moving so quickly, and to prepare employers, workers, and government to use it effectively. And so our vision is that the labor market would understand how to rely on a relevant quality and value of workforce credentials for opportunities, growth, and development. So that's in a nutshell, the elevator speech for about Workcred.
And Jeremy, would you like to talk about ASHRRA?
Sure. So ASHRRA is made up of about 2,000 or so healthcare HR professionals, and we are obviously a healthcare HR society. So, as I started to mention earlier, ASHRRA is an organization. We provide content and learning and opportunity for interaction. A great chat board and message board for folks to bounce ideas and ask questions of one another across the industry. And, when we put on some really great events throughout the year, we put on for ASHRRA members 24, so 2 a month, free webinars. And we put on an annual conference and trade show, which is attended by somewhere between 1,000 and 1,500 people from the industry. So we are here to support the healthcare HR space. And if you haven't explored our website and taken a look around, I'd certainly encourage you to do that on top of being interested in IRAPs.
Thanks, Jeremy. Just a little bit about Dallas College. So we have a very, very broad mission, which is to transform lives through higher education and through workforce development. Prior to coming on to Dallas College, I was actually pretty surprised to find out how ingrained and robust the workforce initiative is within the college. And we have a true national perspective on the way that we want to be almost weaved into the thread of our national workforce initiatives. And so we have a number of strategic priorities, but one of them is that we want to be integrated into the supply chain, if you will, for workforce, not just here regionally in North Texas, but throughout Texas and throughout the nation. And so we've been around for more than 50 years. We've served more than 3 million students over that time. And we have many, many high demand career training programs, credit and continuing education, lots of dual enrollment. We have, more than 3,000 faculty. We went through a major reorganization. You may have heard of us as Dallas County Community College District, which is a lot of C's. So we're really happy to be just Dallas College now. And we actually recently fixed our accreditation so that we could offer some 4-year degrees. So Dallas College is on the move. And we are very passionate about making sure that people can finish their degree with as little debt as possible, sometimes no debt. We work very hard to braid funding. And so this grant project is actually a big part of that mission. And so, as Lisa mentioned, we have she mentioned 12, we got $12 million from the Department of Labor, but our institution matched that 12 million with 4.2 million. So really we're playing in a pot of money of about $16 million to specifically develop and scale healthcare apprenticeships nationally. And so we've been spending the last few years working on that. And we have a number of partners because we don't want to do this in a vacuum. And so Workcred and ASHRRA are 2 significant partners, as well as some of the others that you see on the screen. We've been intentional to include input from the Department of Defense Force Education and Training Branch because we feel passionate about including veterans and strategies for transitioning service members with entry points into these apprenticeship programs. We also work closely with national associations and credentialing bodies so that we can ensure that these programs we're developing are industry driven and that they have a validated credential at the end that's not only stackable, but also portable. And then of course, we are always working with employers to ensure that these programs are relevant and necessary. And then I would be remiss not to say that these programs are accredited by a third-party organization. They're recognized by the ANSI National Accreditation Board, or ANAB for short. So Why apprenticeship? There's a lot of unfilled jobs. And right now it's definitely a job seekers market. As you know, there is a staffing crisis. I don't need to tell you that. But a big part of it too is that people coming out of college or out of high school don't necessarily have the skills that are needed to be successful in a career or job. And so as we're looking at developing these IRAPs, we're trying to fill that gap by creating a competency-based training model. I touched on this a little bit, but there's a lot of student loan debt out there, and this grant is helping people get a credential that is meaningful and competencies and a true career pathway without all of that student loan debt. And as I said, there's lots of unfilled jobs, but there are millions and millions of job postings as well that show that employers are actually moving away from traditional college degree requirements, but towards industry recognized certifications and credentials. So there are many thousands of apprentices nationwide in many occupations, way beyond what you would think of as just the construction trades, if you will. There are huge gains for these apprentices in terms of what their salary looks like. Average starting salary for people finishing an apprenticeship program is $60,000. That's nationwide. And then, like I said, our goal is that apprentices don't have any debt after this program. So Roy's going to talk about some of the ins and outs of these IRAPs.
Right. Well, industry recognized apprenticeship program really tries to take the best practice in all of work-based learning type of approaches, and it's designed to try to be that quick bridge to employment that we hear is a gap that people don't have 2 and 4 years many times to spend in order to achieve. IRAPs really is an expansion of the apprenticeship program. It's characterized by truly being a highly quality, competency based on the job learning opportunities, and it's uniquely requires that there is an industry recognized credential. And the reason that this is important is because many times we are hearing the miscommunication between industry, the credentialing community, and higher education. The IRAP approach, it tries to bring that all together because when we're working with a certification body and looking at their test blueprint and working at the education related type of training, it is trying to bring that all together, and everybody is working off of what should be truly validated competency-based education and learning versus everybody having a different sheet of music. And of course, when we talk about having it capstoned with an industry recognized credential, one of the worst things is if there's a disconnect among these three types of things, because then it's not the student's failure, but we haven't prepared the student to pass the certification at the end because we weren't on the same sheet of music about what the validated competencies are. Next. And so critical to all of this is the preceptor-mentor type of relationship, because many times everybody knows how to teach in the classroom, but many times people are unaware of the knowledge that's important to facilitate learning in the work environment. So we make the preceptor training extremely important so that there is a conscious design about how learning occurs and the assessment that goes along with that. And also that the assessments are aligned with the competencies. Too often, that is not aligned. We have competencies, but the assessment tool does not really align with what they say the competencies are that the person is supposed to come out with. One of the biggest criticisms about any credential by the employers these days is that the individual does not able to perform what what is advertised the credential represents. And so that really brings a lot of mistrust among the credentialing community. IRAPs is a way of ensuring that everybody is doing it, that the assessment tools are in alignment. We are measuring what competencies are important in this regard. And then that's validated at the end with a third party credential. IRAPs also are important because it allows for credit for prior learning. And so, you know, people like in the military and people who have been in experience but maybe never had any formal training, it allows them to say, hey, I'm able to demonstrate at least 50% of these competencies before I even start. And so that brings a quicker bridge to successful employment when that happens. And people are getting credit for that, even in the former administration and the current administration, the federal. There's one thing that most people agreed on, that everything should count toward helping people move toward recognized credentials in their particular occupation and thing. And then it's important, you would not want to receive people from a university that was not accredited, right? Well, the same is true, we think, in non-credit type of credentials and non-degree types of credentials. So the IRAP has a private agency that accredits certification bodies and assessment-based certificate programs. And now under the IRAP program, the accreditor is called a standards recognition entity. So it's not only the validation by the industry recognized credential at the end, plus the assessment that occur on a daily basis, so the triangulation of assessment. But then there's a third party that says, yes, your processes are really good and it meets the standard in which it was intended to do out of DOL. So there's a lot of best practices built into what is called the industry recognized apprenticeship program these days. Next.
Hey, thank you, Roy. So apprenticeship programs, we've already mentioned, of course, this is partially funded by Department of Labor, recognized by ANIB. Dallas College functions as the sponsor. So that means that we do a whole bunch of the paperwork and all of the heavy lifting so that you can just get to work and get your people trained. And so as the employer, you would be directing the program. There would be somebody who's sort of like in the program director role, if you will. And then the preceptors would learn most of the competencies on the job and then have related training or coursework online. And so that's part of the national scaling strategy, is that all of the training we've aligned to this program is available online. The preceptors, the mentors, they are trained. So we have about a total of minimum 3 hours of training for preceptors. And part of that is to ensure that everybody's being evaluated the same and the preceptors are sort of up to speed on adult learning theory and what's required of the apprenticeship program. And then last but not least is that we are coordinating all of this through the nationally recognized certification body. So at the beginning of the session, Lisa mentioned some of the occupations. So we have healthcare culinary services that's been recognized. We've launched that program. And so far, we're getting really positive feedback. We've also, oh, sorry, the animation's a little awkward on this. We've also got healthcare supply chain. That's been recognized. Oh, let me get rid of this animation. Healthcare facility management, that should be coming soon, probably early fall at the latest. We're working on medical assistant right now. MRI technologist has been recognized. Sterile processing technician, we're really excited about that one. We've got a lot of people on the list for getting that one launched. And then medical billing and coding is under development. So right now we have 4 occupations that are ready to go, and it's just about figuring out the logistics.
Amy, can I jump in here for a second?
Yes, please. And I want you to do the next slide too, Jeremy. So
Sure.
take it
So,
away.
yeah, so, ideally what you would look at is, as you see the 4 that are already approved and the ones that are upcoming, there are really 2 pathways into these roles. One is the potential candidate that has little to no skill or little to no experience in this space. And the program is robust enough to take that person that is, quite novice or brand new to the field and give them the skills that they need. But the second pathway, and probably the more relevant pathway, is to take incumbent employees. If you think about culinary, take that tray passer or, that cashier in your cafeteria and move them into the culinary services IRAP, to take your rad tech and move them into the MRI tech role, to take that person that right now is doing your par stock or unloading your truck and moving them into the supply chain role, to take your EVS tech, your highest performing EVS techs and say, hey, we've got a role that's similar enough, but gives you a chance for advancement. It gives you a career path that, that may lead even beyond sterile processing tech. So ideally, all of these careers are built with, or all of these IRAPs are built with, a career path in mind, and can take somebody that is, absolutely novice, new to the industry or new to the profession, or take that person that's already got some experience and give them, some upskilling to be able to then allow them to sit for the certification. As an example, the sterile processing tech, the organization that I worked for many years, at one of our larger sites, we probably had 50 to 55 sterile processing techs. We were incredibly busy OR, and only about half of them were certified sterile processing techs. The other half were trained in-house or trained through programs, but never went on to get their certification. That's the perfect opportunity then, for that organization to say, hey, I'm going to take the other half of my staff that don't have certification, I'm going to put them into the IRAP program, and I'm going to make sure they have all of the skills. Their job title doesn't really change, but we're going to make sure that we take them through this program. And at the end of it, they're going to be able to sit down for this national certification. And I'm going to take my sterile processing department from 50% to 60% to 70% to, hopefully 100%. Certified sterile processing techs, rather than sort of sitting in that status quo at about 50%.
Yeah, and that's the reason that competency-based is so important, because then you can capture the seasoned person who's been working in your facility, and they don't feel like they have to relearn what they've already known for many years. And that is quickly assessed and say, hey, normally takes 3 months to do this. Hey, you probably will be able to do this in 1 month. And of course, looking at credentials and short-term pathways to jobs, that's critical for people these days who really want to improve themselves and move up the ladder in their particular professions or occupations.
Yeah, this program is ideal for your high performers in those feeder roles. And even if you're using it primarily within your current staff, I think everybody online would likely agree that it's easier to backfill that rad tech than it is the MRI tech, and it's easier to backfill that cashier than it is your cook, and it's easier to backfill an EVS tech than it is a sterile processing tech that's got some skills. So the programs are really built on, even if it's not changing or pulling in a ton of external candidates to your organization, while it certainly can, it certainly gives you an opportunity then to backfill at roles that are likely easier to fill. Not in every case, but in many cases easier to fill than these sort of second level or second step in career, in career paths.
Amy, there was a question in the chat about how long are these programs? And of course, we're going to fudge a little and say it depends. It depends on the prior learning assessment tool, if they have to start from the beginning. But I think many of these programs will range from like 3 months to 6 months at the max most of the time. Most of these are fairly short type programs, but it is competency based. So you only pass when you pass the competencies. So
Yeah.
some people may do it very, very quickly, and some people might take a little longer.
Yeah, so Rosanna, the programs are not built on a model that says you must be an apprentice for 6 months or a year or 2 years or 3 years, like like the registered apprenticeship model that we're all relatively familiar with in the trades and so on. So this is not a model that requires a time commitment. It requires a commitment and an assessment of competency. So, as Roy mentioned, you could take that experienced employee that already works, in that department that may not have certification that you're looking to upskill a little further, and that person may move through the program in a matter of, weeks, month, 2 months, where someone else who's brand new to that profession or brand new to the healthcare space may take longer because they are not being given any credit for prior experience, prior learning, et cetera.
There's another question from Michael Thomas about would a graduate of any of these listed programs anywhere in the nation be eligible to take any of these certification exams, even if they have not gone through the apprenticeship program? Probably not, because there are eligibility requirements, and we work with the certification body to make sure that what we are doing is acceptable for eligibility criteria for that. Now, some certifications, like in supply chain, you can have 7 years of experience and then be eligible without any formal program. But most of the time they'll say an associate degree or a bachelor's degree, 3 years of experience at a bachelor's degree, 5 years of experience associate, or 7 years, and all are proven that we are definitely meeting the competency requirements for eligibility for these certifications. So you can't just walk in, and there are some certifications you can just walk in for sure and just take it. But in this case, most of these that are on the screen require some sort of eligibility requirements that we work very closely. That's why we work with the education community, the certification body specifically, that it's going to capstone in that program, and the preceptor understanding that they've got to have these competencies in order to be eligible for the national certification. Does that answer your question, Michael?
I just wanted to add
Yes, thank you.
on that. None of the certifications that we have require apprenticeship, but they all require past experience, past time in a role, knowledge, education, et cetera. So none of these are certifications unique to the IRAP program that then says the only folks that will be getting these certifications are apprentices, IRAP apprentices. But as Roy indicated, in all cases, there are educational requirements, experiential requirements, competency requirements, and expectations that somebody would have to show. None of these are certifications that somebody can simply walk in off the street with no industry experience, no professional experience, and say, I'm going to take this certification exam because I read a book on culinary.
That's right. And I just wanted to give it a specific example as well about the time that's related to the time question. So because of somebody's prior experience, they may more quickly proceed through the apprenticeship program. So we have a culinary apprentice who had quite a bit of experience, but wanted to get the first of the stackable credentials within the culinary services IRAP. And so we awarded him credit for prior learning, and he went complete gangbusters on it with his preceptor, and he finished level 1 of that apprenticeship in 3 weeks. And now is just waiting to sit for the exam and do the practical. And then he's going to jump into the next level of the apprenticeship and get that credential. And then he's eligible probably for the 3rd credential as well. And so he's working with his organization and has full support to go through each of the levels of that particular apprenticeship. On the flip side, we have some people that were not, not as experienced and have just kind of been taking their time. And so it's really just depends on what your organization, what the, how aggressive you want to approach the apprenticeship and what type of support the apprentices have from their preceptors, mentors.
Yeah, I think it's
And
important to
Amy,
also understand.
I'm sorry. We have a
Okay.
couple questions in the chat about the preceptor that you mentioned it. Are the preceptors paid for their training through this program? And then what are the requirements to be a preceptor mentor? Now, the preceptor would need to be within that organization, correct?
Yes.
So I'll let you explain that. Okay.
Yes. So depending on the occupation, the requirements for the preceptors are different. So I'm going to drop a link in this chat that goes to all of our files for all of the apprenticeship programs, and you can see in there what the specific preceptor requirements are. And if anybody wants to meet after this, we can do that too. I can't just make a blanket statement. Essentially, though, they probably need to have certification or a related certification for that occupation, some leadership experience, having coached or led others, so that we know that they're equipped to actually be in that preceptor mentor role. And then some number of years of experience. It's not a lot. It's just sort of a bare minimum. And then are they paid? The answer is no. Although, and on the next slide, we talk about that. We have some incentive funding that we can give to each site that launches these apprenticeships, and that incentive funding could be used as an incentive. You can turn around and use that as an incentive for the preceptor training. And like I said, it's only 3 hours, so it's not a huge chunk of time for the actual training, but rather their big investment is going to be training the apprentices on the job. It's our understanding that that's already happening as it is. So, our value add here is that we've gone through a lot of detail and vetting of these credentials, and then creating the entire program so that essentially you don't have to.
I think it's also important to understand that there is not an expectation that organizations are going out and hiring preceptors for IRAP positions. The expectation is that your sterile processing tech IRAP is likely going to run through your sterile processing manager or a supervisor. Your food nutrition IRAP will run through a leader within food nutrition. The same can be said for MRI, whether it's a chief tech or whether it's a radiologist. These programs will run through somebody that you already have in place that is likely already doing a lot of the education and providing some experiential learning for folks on the job anyway. So this is not a matter of a cost add for your organization. This is a matter of providing a more robust structure to what is likely already being done within your walls.
So Jerry, can you talk a little bit about the employer benefits?
Sure, absolutely. So, there are a couple of different benefits. I mean, before I jump into the ones that are here, I think it's incredibly important to think about, what this ultimately does for your organization. Having spent 20 plus years in healthcare HR,
Did we lose him?
Yeah, he froze.
He's frozen. We can't hear Jeremy right now.
nursing staff, and for our technicians, and for our pharmacists, and for our professionals. The unfortunate reality, am I still on?
Yeah, we
you're
lost you for a minute, but yeah.
So the industry does a fantastic job with our clinicians and with our professionals in creating career opportunities, career ladders, and giving them experience so that their career can grow. The sort of unwritten, non-bulleted opportunity here really is that this takes a new subsegment of your entry-level employee. Obviously, the MRI program is a little different, but all of these other professions are more entry-level roles that historically, and in most cases, organizations do not have a career pathing model built. And this creates that and gives you an opportunity then to say, look, we care about you, the entry-level employee in environmental service or food nutrition or in supply chain, as much as we care about that nurse, as much as we care about that pharmacist, as much as we care about the physicians and and the ancillary technicians that we have. This gives you an opportunity to see your career grow as well. In terms of the benefits for organizations, first and foremost, and I think we've sort of touched on it, but the program is entirely free. There is not an out-of-pocket cost whatsoever for your organization. So to use the program is as simple as running through a relatively simple organizational agreement with Dallas College and saying, yeah, you know what, we can provide a preceptor, and yeah, we'll make sure that they get their 3 hours of training, and we will use the program as expected. It's a pretty easy agreement to get into when there's really nothing that costs you anything, and there's very, very, very little risk on the part of the organization. In terms of monetary benefits, first and foremost, for the organization, there's a one-time incentive fee per location. So if you're a single standalone organization, you've got an opportunity for a $3,000 payment that helps you promote the program. You can use that to pay for the downtime for your preceptors as they get trained. It's really sort of up to the organization how they use those dollars. $3,000 doesn't sound like a ton, but if you're sitting within an organization that has 5 sites, now you're talking about $15,000. If you're sitting at a site that has 25 sites, obviously you're talking about, $75,000. You're talking about, a much bigger pool of money than to help promote the programs, pay for any downtime. We've heard of organizations that are using those dollars to, in the culinary program, everybody in the program then gets, they get a chef's jacket when they finish the program, and they're using those dollars to incentivize, folks to get through and sort of reward that. So those dollars do exist. Again, whether or not an organization wants to apply for those dollars within the program, it's a little different than just, agreeing to participate in the program. But, if the juice is worth the squeeze on that, I certainly would encourage you to do that. There's also a $150 incentive for each employee that goes through the program and completes it. So, if you've got one apprentice, it's $150. You can use that money to reward them, to have a party, to celebrate the fact that they've done it. You can use it again to offset any non-productive time that you might have as a result of the program. And one apprentice, it's $150. But if you decide along the way, we're going to do 10 apprentices and we're going to do 100 apprentices, across these programs, obviously those dollars all stack up. It's important to understand that that's while the grant funding permits, and this is a nationally scalable program. So we are promoting it across the country, literally, from sea to shining sea. So, if you're interested in the program and you're interested in those incentive dollars, $16 million sounds like a lot, but as you start to think about all of the healthcare institutions across the country, the dollars can go quick. In terms of,
Sorry.
Amy, somebody asked about whether they were thinking maybe it's only good for Texas, but the grant is national scaling. So California, yep. If you're in California, you still would qualify.
Absolutely. The federal dollars, from the Department of Labor and the match dollars can be used across the country. Amy, can you go back just for one moment?
Oh, sure. Sorry. I was trying to get through that.
Yeah. The other thing that I wanted to make sure that everybody understands is the related instruction, meaning any educational instruction that needs to happen on the front end is actually paid for by the grant as well. So the apprentices themselves have the education, any instructional and course related education paid for at 100%, with the exception of MRI because it's a slightly different program. And the certification exam is paid for. So there's also no out-of-pocket cost for you when you think about tuition reimbursement. There's no out-of-pocket cost for the apprentice, to pay for coursework. There's no out-of-pocket cost for them to pay for certification. So it really becomes a very easy program to consider when you think about the fact that, and we all understand that there's not a lot of excess dollars in healthcare right now. The program is paid for by grant funding. and covered by grant funding. And really, whether it's the organization or the apprentice themselves, there is little to no out-of-pocket cost, again, with the exception of the MRI program. And if any of you are interested in that program, we can get you those details.
And Jeremy, just to clarify, the related instruction is through Dallas College and it's online courses?
Correct. Correct. The MRI program, again, that is the one that is slightly different. We can get you that information if if there are some organizations out there that are interested in MRI. I think I'll also point out the fact that this is not an all or nothing proposition. If you're interested in sterile processing and none of the others, that's fine. If you're interested in all of them, that's fine. If you're interested in a singular apprentice, hey, I've got one person in sterile processing that I think will be dynamite and needs to get certified, great. If you're thinking I've got 100 people across, all 4 current apprenticeship opportunities, and I want to join the others as well, fantastic. It is not, it's not a one size fits all program. So if you have interest in any one of the programs with any number of apprentices, we can make that work.
And we have another question in the chat about how long the program has been in existence.
So the first program was approved about
A year ago.
a year ago, give or take. So that was the one in food. And we've got a handful of programs that are already running and using that program across the country. And most of the others, meaning the other ones, have all kind of come online since the food program, have all come online, I believe, in 2022, several in the last couple of months. So that's part of the reason that we're pushing the program harder and trying to get in front of larger audiences, because now there are a number of apprenticeship opportunities. And we didn't want to do this in 2021 when we had one program and we may get a bunch of folks online that say, hey, I'm not really interested in food. Now that we've got a handful that are operational and a couple that are about to become operational relatively soon, we felt like now was the time to start promoting the program.
I see the question about the program director. So the program director will be involved with the timing of the online classes, but depending on the occupation, some of the occupations have a self-paced study program. Others are real-time, like 6 or 7 week courses. So it kind of just depends on the occupation. The program director will not have to be involved in the setup per se. So we handle all of that on our end. Yep. Jeremy, can I go on to the next slide?
Yep, absolutely.
I think you touched on this a bit, but if there was anything you wanted to.
Yeah, this is just some of the benefits, obviously, that are related to apprenticeship programs in general, and providing opportunity for this group of entry-level workers. It's very aligned with medical education, clinical rotations. It is an extension of learning and opportunity and career growth for folks that historically haven't been given that opportunity. Obviously, it is just in time competency-based training. It's one of those programs that you may run it for 6 months and fill all of your culinary positions, all of your cook positions, and we don't need to run it now for a few months or 6 months or a year, because we've staffed up and and it's not necessary. And a year from now or 2 years from now, you may say, hey, it's time to jump back in. We've seen some turnover. It's time to move back through the program. It doesn't have any significant impact on employee productivity, because the expectation is, at least with your incumbent employees, that they continue to work in the role that they have and continue to function in the role that you pay them for. And you are just providing some additional learning, additional opportunities, additional exposure within their individual department. So because of that, we don't see it impacting productivity significantly. There's certainly some productivity loss, but ultimately that's gained in opportunity, it's gained in better experienced employees, and it's gained in filling positions that are a little tougher to fill all the quicker. In terms of recruitment, we have found that the organizations that have actually created postings that identify apprenticeship opportunities, whether it be in sterile processing, in food, in MRI, are actually getting more candidates on those requisitions than they are on, on the exact same requisition, but without apprenticeship in the title. So it actually is bolstering candidates, which is fantastic. We talked about the fact that, that just about all of the training costs are covered. It's certainly an opportunity to reduce turnover in what is, in what are roles that are much higher turnover roles, because as you create opportunity and as you create a true focus on your entry-level workers, you're going to get that same loyalty in return. The great news is we've had some fantastic organizations and fantastic subject matter experts that have weighed in on the competencies, weighed in on the certifications. We will certainly pass them on to the group, but they're literally, for each of these IRAP opportunities, I don't think any of them have less than 100 competencies that somebody needs to be able to demonstrate throughout the program. So they are incredibly robust programs, but they're not overwhelming to the point where they're going to create paralysis within your department and people are not going to be able to move through the programs. They're based on real world experiences, and they are learning opportunities that anybody with desire and a skill set in that space will ultimately be able to get through. Obviously, you can use this as a community benefit. It creates better patient outcomes. You will absolutely see return on your investment. And the fact that prior learning is considered means that people get to accelerate through the program at their own pace. You're not simply counting down the days with an incredibly high performer who has all the competencies you need, but needs to tick off another month or 2 or 6 of apprenticeship before you can promote them or move them into the role that they've been training for. The fact of the matter is, once they've finished the programs and your preceptor has said they've got all the skills, you can certainly move them and we can set them up then obviously to get their certification.
Thank you, Jeremy. I'm going to skip that last slide, throw up our contract information because I know we only have 6 minutes left. So we'd like to open it up to further questions and discussion.
Great questions, by the way, throughout the thing.
And I see Michael has his hand raised. Michael, do you have a question or comment?
Question, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you all. Great information, a wonderful program too. I think this question may be more for Amy as a sponsor, right? You guys are the sponsor.
Yes.
So just curious a little bit about process. Does Texas have a state apprenticeship standards division, or do you guys just work directly with DOL?
We work directly with DOL.
Okay.
But in this case, because it's separate from registered apprenticeship, DOL, we do not get DOL's blessing, if you will, in this case. Instead of DOL recognizing the program, it's recognized by ANSI. So even though it's funded by the DOL, the ANSI National Accreditation Board is the reviewer of the program and the essentially the rubber stamp that this program meets the quality that's expected for programs like this.
Okay, great. So I think that Jeremy had mentioned, all of the the skills and responsibilities necessary to log the total amount of hours necessary to complete all of the competencies. Is that something that that DOL wants you to report to them on that?
No.
Okay,
In fact, that's something that really makes IRAP stand out, is that there's no required time in a seat just for the sake of time in a seat. The only time when that is required is if the credentialing body itself has a requirement of time. So sterile processing requires 400 hours. So 10 weeks essentially would be the shortest that you could do that apprenticeship because of that requirement. And then the MRI one does, that credentialing body also requires 1,000 hours, which is 6 months. And you could not master MRI any faster than that anyway. So we think that, that's acceptable.
I think
Great,
it's
great.
also important to understand that where you have incumbent workers that have seat time already, it is likely that they are meeting those standards already. So if you've got a staff, like in the example I used at one of the hospitals that I supported, we have staff that have been working in that department for years and years that are not certified. They likely have already met the threshold for those 400 hours, and could very easily be documented. That hour requirement is met. Now let's make sure that they get through all of the competencies necessary to be able to sit and pass that certification exam.
Exact. Great. Thank you. So, and just one more quick question then, Amy. So if it was necessary, I mean, it's not necessary, obviously, for this to be as a pre-apprenticeship, but if you wanted to, what types of steps would you guys have to go through for that?
So with this grant in general, we do offer pre-apprenticeship as an option. So if you have a specific example, we could discuss that at a future meeting. I will say with MRI, we've set up a pre-apprenticeship so that people can kind of test the waters and see if that's the right pathway for them. They can become kind of a tech aid role. And then if they want to do the full apprenticeship, then they would do that and become a registered MRI technologist. But yeah, if you have some ideas for pre-apprenticeship, we can certainly talk about that. And we are absolutely looking for pre-apprentices as well, but they would not be IRAP pre-apprentices. They'd just be general pre-apprentices funded by our grant.
Great,
and that would absolutely count toward our goals with the Department of Labor funding for scaling as well. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Michael, which organization are you with?
I'm in California. We are the America's Job Centers of California. So we work a lot with the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act grant.
Okay.
Excellent.
Thank you, Michael. Yeah. So, and some of our registered apprenticeship programs could also be scaled. And I know all the ins and outs of using WIOA funding for that. So we could have a separate conversation offline if you want to talk in more detail about that.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Sure.
Wow, thank you so much for all these great questions. And Amy and Roy and Jeremy, thank you all for an amazing presentation. The question in the chat is, in order to get started, who to contact? And I see, Amy, you put your information in the chat box. So Teri, is there anything you wanted to add before we close out?
No, I think this was a great presentation and great questions. We will send out a copy of the presentation along with Amy's contact information. And we would encourage all hospitals on the line to really, take a closer look at this program, see if it's right for your organization. And if it is, you have a grant funded program here ready for you to take a part to participate in. So with that said, I thank you, Amy and Jeremy and and Roy for presenting to our members today.
You're very welcome. I did drop a link to our files in the chat as well. That should work for everybody. You can see all of the occupational frameworks and quick start guides and maybe some FAQs, that kind of stuff in that file.
Perfect. Great. Thank you all so much.